Hello, this is Professor Werwath. I wanted to share with you some ideas that have come out of the business world, the business schools, entrepreneurship. Uh, some ideas that I think are quite dangerous if not used properly. Some ideas that, frankly, can go too far. Some ideas that are dangerous for users, or at least dangerous for the environment. We have to think more holistically about the impact our products have on the environment, on the public at large, and amongst society. So, um, as engineers, as managers, I want you to be at least aware of them and do what you can to moderate the use of these ideas as you stumble across them in your line of work. Assuming, of course, you're in the product line of work, as I have been for the last 40 years or so. So let's get started on what I consider to be some of the most dangerous ideas. And I'll be upfront and honest with you. I've taught some of them myself in my classroom, and I have probably failed to caution students as to how to, I guess, avoid the pitfalls and also how to not go too far with these ideas. This is the overview. This is the summary of what I'm going to be going through. Planned obsolescence is obviously on the top of the list. This is something that we have been incorporating into products now for over 100 years. We're now seeing it in a lot of other areas as well, whether it's modern day appliances, automobiles, um, electric as well as gas, homes, you name it. So all sorts of products are being designed to fail. And the problem, of course, is how do you do that and at the same time manage customer expectations about what a product should be and how long it should last, right? Subscription-based features, there's a lot of information out there about that. I'll talk briefly about that. Non-upgradable designs, right? Non-modular designs, right? Maximizing churn, getting people to replace their products as quickly as possible so that you can sell more products, obviously, as a company. The problem, of course, is that you fill the landfills that much faster and that much more completely. So I think we need to be careful about maximizing churn, which might also maximize waste, right? Maximum share of wallet, in other words, the long-term value of an acquired customer, what we'll abbreviate as LTVAC, which sounds great. You want to get as much money as you can from your customer, of course. The problem is that it could also lead to additional churn, additional waste, and frankly, can make customers upset. One aspect of LTVAC is, again, subscription-based features, right? So some of these ideas, some of these concepts are connected to each other, right? Non-user serviceability, right? Which forces you to replace the product instead of upgrade the product or service the product or repair the product. Well, guess what? If it's a sealed product, if you can't get into it, if I crack the screen on my phone, do I have to get a new phone? If I use up the battery, if my battery is no longer rechargeable, do I have to get a new phone? I mean, crazy things like that, that frankly, even 10, 20 years ago, phones, when they were, cellular phones, were designed with replaceable batteries. We don't seem to do that anymore, right? Minimize TCO, which sounds great when you're trying to market a product. TCO is the total cost of ownership. The problem with that, of course, is that if you're not maintaining the product because you're not using dollars or spending dollars to do maintenance, regular simple maintenance, changing oil, changing filters, cleaning out crevices, rotating tires, or transmission fluid is a great example. We'll get into that later, right? Maximizing shareholder value, which in turn typically focuses on quarterly revenue. And I've worked in companies, I'm sure you have too, where we spend money to accelerate revenue from next quarter to this quarter. Makes no sense at all. You're going to see that revenue anyways. Why is it so special you see it this quarter? Because most companies operate as if there is no next quarter, that this is the only quarter in the universe and we must maximize it. And then, in 30 days or 60 days, when we're in the next quarter, we will do the same exact thing. And we will spend money and run around like nuts, pulling orders in from future quarters and bring them into this quarter. Makes no sense at all. So these are dangerous ideas that make people do dangerous, stupid, and expensive things, not just costly, but in some cases, adding risk to projects, adding risk to your customer. Let's start with planned obsolescence. I'm hoping you can see this image of a landfill. I'm sure this is just one of millions of landfills around the world. Designing a product to fail prematurely. What is the expected lifetime of a product? Is a car supposed to last 100,000 miles, 200,000, 300,000? It begs the question, what is an appropriate lifetime? Reputations are made on products that last and outlast anyone's expectation. The Macintosh laptop is known worldwide as being one of the most reliable. We've got used Mac laptops that never seem to die, right? The batteries might go bad, but you replace the battery and you've given it another 5, 6, 7 years of life, right? How long should a computer last? How long should a smartphone last, right? What is the software support behind that product? If it's only a couple of years, as you might find with many Android phones, versus say the Pixel lineup, which I think gets to 4 years. And I think 4 years or 5 years is what Apple iPhone will give you. So, what happens when the software is no longer there to support your phone? Your phone becomes, let's say, it's vulnerable, right, to cybersecurity threats. So you're obviously going to want to replace your phone once you don't have good software support to back it up. What's the warranty coverage, right? For most cars these days, it's 3 years. For most electric cars, the drivetrain can be warranted for 8 years or more. So what's normal? What's not normal? What can you expect? And should the product live beyond the warranty period? And what happens when you have extended warranties, right? Required maintenance. A lot of companies are requiring maintenance free because frankly, that reduces the cost of ownership. That sounds great. No maintenance required. It's a great marketing tool, but frankly, products often need maintenance, whether it's a computer, a smartphone, or a car or an automobile. And then of course, this adds to the waste problem. The faster we obsolete the products, the faster they wind up in a landfill. The ripple effect, critical minerals get churned that much faster, raising the price of those materials as well. So why are things getting so expensive? Well, in part, we're running out. I mean, if we don't have access to the minerals because we've used them up in building phones that we literally thrown into landfills that much faster, right? All we've done is destroy our future, the future of the business, the future of our culture, the future of society. And our future happiness in terms of being able to use products in the future and not rely on products that were built 5, 10, 20 years ago. This planned obsolescence thing goes way back. This is not new. I said it's been going on for 100 years. Here's my example that proves the point, right? In 1924, major light bulb manufacturers, light bulbs were still more or less in their infancy, but they had become quite efficient and they have been known to last thousands of hours, right? But the problem, of course, is that when you have a light bulb that lasts for thousands of hours, you're not selling as many replacement light bulbs, right? Gee, what a problem, right? From the customer perspective, it's actually quite a good thing. From a company perspective, it's not such a good thing. So the cartel got together to minimize or reduce the lifespan to what they agreed to be 1,000 hours, right? And because of the way the cartel operated, if you built a light bulb that lasted more than 1,000 hours on average, you would be fined. So there was actually financial penalties associated with this, right? This is a deliberate reduction in the durability of a product. Why would any company do this? Well, back to the numbers. If you can sell more light bulbs, why not, right? If you can get more out the door, but that means the old light bulbs have to go somewhere. Guess where they're going? Back to the landfill. So one small example that is literally 100 years old, and these are the companies that were involved. Look it up, Phoebus Cartel in Geneva, right? German automobiles, right? Premium brands, BMW, Mercedes, Audi, Volkswagen have been scrutinized for practices that align with planned obsolescence. Complex electronics, non-serviceable components, software locks that only the dealer can access, right? So you are literally blocked from repairing your own car, even with an independent mechanic, right? And shorter component lifespans. You would be amazed if you open up any of these cars, under the hood, how much plastic is involved. Some of this plastic is literally designed to fail, causing leaks, causing all sorts of premature failures. Good luck if you have any of these brands of cars in your possession that have over 100,000 miles. Talk to the owners, watch the YouTube videos, talk to mechanics. Mechanics, I think, will be very glad to tell you. Just ask them. I can pick up an Audi, a used Audi, 120,000 miles. What do you think? I'm sure he'll tell you or she'll tell you what they think about such a proposition. I'm sure you're aware of subscription features, the Kindle books that you think you own, you don't really own, right? You have a license to use that particular title, that particular piece of software, right? Same is true with video purchases, software in general, whether it's you're running an application, the Microsoft Office, you don't own it, you have a license to use it under their terms, right? Tractors and combines, heated seats, right? All of these have software features that have subscription models that require monthly payments, that also require that if you let them lapse, you basically don't have access to that software anymore, right? This gives users a false sense of ownership. You think you own something when in fact it doesn't really belong to you. It leads potentially to dissatisfaction, to backlash. And since you don't own the code, right, what you have is a limited license to use the code, right? Non-user serviceability, right? This is intermingled with the software issue, but it's a large issue on capital items like farm equipment, where you're talking, hundreds of thousands of dollars, many hundreds of thousands of dollars for complex equipment. Customers who used to be mechanically inclined, they could repair their own vehicles, can no longer do that. Even if they have the skills, it's blocked. They cannot access the software without the tools. The tools are available only to the dealers. The dealers can charge whatever they want and basically give you a long lead time, so you won't have access to your equipment when you need it. And it blocks you from fixing it on your own or going to a third party, right? Cars these days with sealed transmissions that are not serviceable, bearings, brakes, discs that can't be machined. Brake discs used to be able to be machined so that you can get a second life out of a brake disc. Now they ship so thin that they are literally unmachinable. You have to replace them whenever they get damaged or scored. Computers with no user accessible technology, right? Non-modular designs in general. So where has this been, I guess, in the papers lately? John Deere. John Deere and right to repair and software license have been a huge problem. John Deere dealers have a monopoly on the software. If you own a Deere piece of equipment, you may not be able to maintain it the way you would like without going to the dealer and without spending a lot of money and perhaps experiencing a queuing delay. So you might have to wait weeks or months for your equipment to come back to you. All the while, this is which should have been a productive piece of equipment, earning you money and keeping you in a profitable situation as a farmer. Let's pivot a little bit to configurations, right? Today's Apple or other laptops are basically shipped with a fixed configuration, and in many cases, they're not upgradable, right? So the fixed amount of memory, fixed battery, fixed hard drive. Apple, I think, is a major offender in this regard. They don't tend to allow upgradability by the user, right? It forces you to buy new hardware just to make an upgrade. You need a bigger disk, you either get an external drive or you buy another computer, right? It also impacts your ability to do repairs. If you break a screen, can you easily repair it? Will you void the warranty, et cetera, et cetera. So all of these things increase churn. All of these things are supposed to be very clever devices by the companies. And I'm sure I've mentioned this as, clever devices in my classroom as well. But the truth is, it's adding to the landfill problem. It's adding to electronic waste. It's adding to customer dissatisfaction and cost. So, frankly, there's got to be a better answer, and there is. I'll get to it at the very last slide. Replaceable batteries. I think I mentioned this before. The original idea with EVs was to have swappable batteries. The original idea with phones was to have swappable batteries. Phones shipped for many years. Samsung, not just Samsung, LG was particularly known for selling phones with swappable batteries. So you can have 2 or 3 spare batteries in your pocket. If you had a long, conversation or teleconference, you can swap a battery and keep going. No longer the case, right? The thinking must be, oh, these batteries last longer, so you don't need to have battery swap, or because of the design, they've limited your ability to literally have a user replaceable battery. On the right, you see a robot that's literally swapping a battery in China. These Chinese electric cars are in many cases designed, some of them are designed with swappable batteries. You need a swap station. These batteries weigh over 1,000 pounds. These robots can literally do it in a matter of minutes, about as fast as it would take to fill up your car with gasoline if that's what you had was a gas car. I mentioned LTVAC before, right? Long-term value of an acquired customer. Examples are refrigerators, right? They have disposable filters. So if I buy a refrigerator, let's just assume I bought it for $1,000, the little filter in the corner is a water filter, and that filters the water going to the dispenser and to the ice cubes, right? You want to change that maybe twice a year. That's a 35, let's say it's a $35 filter, so that's $70 a year. You're going to own that refrigerator for 15 years. That's well over $1,000 in filters. So you've spent more on the filters in 15 years than you have spent on the original refrigerator to begin with, okay? This is by design. Try finding a cheap alternative to that water filter. Try finding a third-party water filter that is compatible with your refrigerator. Good luck. I've tried it myself, right? Cars and their air filters, engine oil and transmission oil, computers and their cloud-based services. All of these are mechanisms for the computer companies, for example, to increase their revenue, to sell you a subscription model on top of the price of the computer. And of course, extended warranties and maximizing churn. That becomes the challenge, right? How do you maximize churn while maximizing customer loyalty? That, I think, is the challenge, right? Now I'm going to probably get a little controversial here, right? Refurbishment programs, they sound great, don't they? So they give your laptop, your smartphone, even your car, I suppose, a second life, right? That's the good news, right? On the surface, this should reduce waste, correct? Because your product is now lasting longer. Instead of 3 or 4 years, it lasts 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Okay, that's great. However, if it incentivizes you to replace your computer, your phone, or your car that much faster, that means that you're buying as a replacement from a factory somewhere. And ultimately, you're now doubling or tripling the number of items going into a landfill. So refurbishment, when it's meant for the original owner, to me sounds great. Refurbishment to incentivize the original owner to buy a replacement product isn't so great. So think about kind of that duality, and maybe you've got a better answer than I do. But you've got electronics with have toxic pollution, right? That these electronics do contain hazardous materials like lead and mercury, right? So again, the reality is refurbishment can lead to more churn, faster upgrade cycles, and encourages people to buy a new machine faster than they normally would, okay? While trade-in is better than disposal, one must ask, what behavior does this stimulate? Every car company, computer company, smartphone company is pursuing refurbishments for a reason. For a reason. They know they're going to sell more product, and now they can get the secondary sales in terms of the used product, right? So Apple is very happy to sell you a used phone, knowing that full well that somebody else bought a new phone in order to enable them to sell you that used phone. TCO, total cost of ownership, right? This is something that you can calculate, but unfortunately it's become a marketing concept now. So minimum TCO means they're encouraging owners to neglect their vehicles in many cases, right? So if you never change your transmission fluid, because it's not called out in the owner's manual, right? You could very well doom your car to a 100,000-mile lifespan or less, right? A well-engineered car that's properly maintained with fluids being, changed out regularly could easily last 200, maybe even 300,000 miles, right? Ask a mechanic. This was true from say 2010 to about 2018 or thereabouts, but somewhere around the 2018 timeframe, companies started to focus on TCO, reducing the total cost of ownership by designing neglect into the product, literally calling things like transmission fluid lifetime fluid, right? Implying that you never have to change it. When you maximize shareholder value like this, you ignore the other stakeholders in the equation, right? So anytime you hear somebody says maximize shareholder value, this is what they taught in the business schools up until about 10 years ago, right? So they're giving you an antiquated view. Today, we must look at all stakeholders, the environment, the public, society, workers, employees, customers, suppliers, et cetera. So the entire ecosystem has to be accommodated, has to be looked at, has to be understood. It's not just maximizing your stock price at the expense of everything else. Frankly, that's cultural suicide. to continue down that path. So please, when you hear it, push back. Let's look at a laptop, right? I just bought one myself, very happy with it. I try not to buy these too often. They are expensive, but they're also highly impactful in a negative way, right? Do you realize that the material, even though you might have a 3, 4, 5 pound laptop, which sounds like minimal impact on the environment, it takes 1.2 tons of raw materials mined, right? Raw mining, input at the very top of the funnel, if you will, 1.2 million, or 1.2 metric tons of raw materials to make one laptop. That 5 pound laptop takes aluminum, copper, cobalt, lithium, gold, rare earths, silica, graphite, etc., plastics. The CO2 emissions are 1/3 of a metric ton per laptop. The amount of water, just the amount of water in your laptop is 50,000 gallons. Okay. Toxic byproducts, heavy metals, acids, and e-waste. If they're not recycled, they wind up in the landfill, and they might very well wind up in your water table. So you might be drinking this whether you know it or not. There is an answer. There is at least a bright light at the end of this kind of dark tunnel that I've been taking you down. And that bright light is Framework. Framework is a company that has committed themselves to modular products. The modular laptop is shown here. When you buy a Framework 16, it comes in these pieces that are easily snapped together. Pieces that include your memory, your solid state drive, your SSD, your keyboard, your display, your power supply, your ports. You want USB-C, you want USB-A. All of these things are easily snapped into place. You can configure it any way you want. You want to upgrade to USB-C, you want to upgrade to additional memory, you want to upgrade your SSD. All of this is easily done by the user. No need to purchase any new product. Frankly, it's all there for you. So hopefully I've given you some things to think about. As engineers, we have much bigger influence than we realize. Marketing is going to tell you what the customers are desiring or what the business desires to maximize revenue. And yes, it's important to keep the business, viable. But the flip side is you have to keep the environment viable as well. And without the environment and with upset customers, our businesses are doomed. With that, thank you very much.